short video coming up now about the S-tax diagram. This has been an AP favorite over the years, so I think it's worth spending some time on. Behind me have the very typical supply and demand graph, and I've done one thing that's notable, and that is I connected the demand curve and the supply curve to the axis. So right now, I didn't draw it in, but we could find the quantity, we could find the price, and then once we did that, we could do all of this consumer surplus. Remember, we'd have this triangle of consumer surplus and producer surplus, and that would be 1/2 base times height. So it's important to remember that when we talk about S-tax. Bad edit later, we have a new graphic. This is the S-tax graph. Hopefully it's all coming back to you. Now, the thing that's happened here is the government has imposed a per unit tax. That's a fixed dollar amount on every unit that the seller sells. So the seller has to pay it. That's a little bit like a cost then to them per unit. So it's like it shifts the supply curve back. Remember, a higher input cost would shift supply to the left. So we get a new outcome. Our new outcome is the S-tax with the demand curve. So right here is our new quote-unquote equilibrium. That's going to give us this lower amount sold QT. It's going to push the buyer's price up to PB. So that's the new outcome in the market. Now, higher price sounds good for the seller, but remember there's a tax here they have to send to the government in this amount, the vertical amount PB minus PS. That's going to the government. Now, that distance also should be reflected in the distance between the two supply curves, should you have to figure it out from that information. Okay, now what emerges, hopefully, are 4 distinct shapes. Let's start with what I think is the easiest one, the deadweight loss. That's this triangle right here. Remember, we've got less trades. We've lost those good trades. And they had a dollar amount. So it's this triangle here, and you do that in dollars. Remember, triangles are 1/2 base times height. Okay, secondly, we have the tax wedge, or the tax revenue. That's a rectangle. Remember, the per unit amount is PB to PS. That's on a per unit basis how much the government's getting. And there are QT units being sold. So it's this rectangle right here, tax wedge, tax revenue. Okay, that leaves only these very small areas now of consumer and producer surplus. Remember, producer surplus is everything above the supply curve, but below the price they're getting. So that's going to be right here, producer surplus, much lower. Consumer surplus is everything below the demand curve, but above the price. So that's this area here. And now we've accounted for the 4 areas in the S-tax graph.